That's my man. That in his mind, he said, this is mine. And I am hesitating to take the land. See, people get into the mindset and the mentality that something is theirs, when all fact is not. He just made a 3-year peace treaty with Syria, where Syria says to them, in fact, everything that is ours is yours. But Ahab says, I want everything under my control. He was greedy for more. Greedy for more than he can have bear. People, how many of you want more than you can bear? You want more children, you want a bigger paying job, you want better cars, a better house, you want a marriage like them across the street, you want friends like them. Many of us want more than we can bear. And Ahab says, I want that city, it is mine. So, the prophets come up. Not an uncommon thing for Ahab to have prophets who serve other gods beside God to tell him, go up to battle, you would take the city. So he says to Jehoshaphat, will you go to battle with me? Jehoshaphat says, in fact, my chariots are your chariots, my horses are your horses, my men are your men. I will go to war with you, but only if the Lord is with us. See, what you need to have in your corner is people who will ride with you, yet before they ride with you, they say, let's ask God if this is the right way. People will say, I want to build a building, I want to build a city, I want to do this and that. You need friends to say, yeah, I will do it with you, but if God is not in this with us, I can't do that with you. We must acknowledge God in all our ways. We must seek God and ask God, God, even though I want this, should I go after it? So, King Ahab says, listen, there's one prophet in Israel. I mean, Jehoshaphat said, there has to be one prophet in Israel, one prophet in the land or people that speaks of God. And there was a man named Mishan. And Ahab said, listen, man, every time I talk to this fella, he always tells me evil. No, he doesn't tell you evil all the time. He tells you what is right of God. For nothing that comes out of God's mouth is evil. Every time the prophet speaks to Ahab, he tells Ahab that God is not with him, that God is not in this, that his desires are not of God. See, when people call their haters are not the real haters. When people call people who are against them, who speak that God said this is not right, they call them haters and doubters. No, they're speaking the truth. Now, Ahab says, go ahead and get the man, bring him to me. Now, why are they going to get the man and bring him to him? The prophets of Israel are prophesying, speaking. You will win the battle. You will win the battle. You will win the battle, O Ahab. You will win the battle. See, you got to watch people around you who tell you to go somewhere, who are so for you, who believe that they had their best interest in mind. So the servant goes to the prophet's house and says, listen, prophet, the king wants you. Now, I want you, when you go into the city, whatever the prophets are saying, agree with them. I beg of thee. And the prophet said, listen, I only speak what God will allow me to speak. So when the prophet gets to the city, the Bible says that he speaks in agreement with the prophets. For Ahab said, should I go up and take the city, or should I refrain from going to fight the battle? And he said, the Lord is with you. Go ahead up there and take the battle. And Ahab says, nah, this is not right. This is not right. Because every time I talk to you, you tell me opposite. How many times must I make you swear? He says. And he says, okay, you want the truth? He says, I've seen Israel at the top of the mountain scattered with no shepherd. And you were dead, O Ahab. You were dead in the battle. And the chant was, tell every man go back to his house in peace. And Ahab looks at Jehoshaphat and says, see, every time I speak to this man, he tells me no. He tells me no. It's always evil. So God gives us an insight into heaven. For the second time, I believe, in the Old Testament. And the prophet says, listen, I see God sitting on his throne, with the spirits of God on the right and on the left. And God is asking a question to his people. Who will go down and persuade old old King Ahab. People, let me say this. God and Satan talk on a daily basis. This is the second time that God allows us to see inside of heaven. That every time that there is a conversation between God and the sons of God, between God and the devil, how do I know? For the book of Job chapter 1 and 2 says that the sons of God come to God and they sit with God and have a meeting with God, and Satan comes up and speaks with God. So God is asking his people, Ahab wants to pursue the no. He wants to go forward when I'm telling him no. He wants to keep on going when I tell him that he would die. God has told you no. He has told you not to pursue that very thing that you want to pursue. So God says, who will persuade him? And many came up with many different things to do. But then the Spirit walks forward and said, listen, Lord, I will persuade him. He said, how? I will be a lying tongue in the mouths of the prophets. And God said, you shall prevail. You should do right. See, everything that we want for ourselves is not good. When God tells us no, we seem to pursue that no. Ahab rejects God's no and decides to go into battle. Throughout history, people have pursued the no of God. God told Adam and Eve, do not eat of the tree in the middle of the garden. Yet they pursued the no. And yet when we pursue the no, things happen. The Bible says that David pursues the no of the Ten Commandments. How do I know? For the Bible says that he commits adultery. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was wrong. Yet he pursued the no. Israel pursues the no, are trying to be like other nations. For God said, do not be like the neighboring nations, for you are a peculiar people. You are set aside. You are a chosen people. But all you want to do is be like those next door. You are different from them, yet they pursue the no. Balaam pursued the no of God. For God says, if they come back and he asks of you to come with us, then go. But the Bible says in Numbers 22 that when the kings and princes came to the door, that he jumps up out of his bed and says, let's go pursue the nations. Let's go curse Israel. Pursuing the no. Our bad desires. We have good desires and we have bad desires. Some of your desires are not good. Some of mine are not good. I want things that are not mine. I want things that are not good for me. I want things that God has told me no to. Okay? We tend to want our desires over the desires of God. Our desires, majority of the time, is selfish and bad for us. You want what is not yours. How I know? Ahab wanted what is not his. Straight back on the 10th commandment, on the literal 10th commandment says, do not cover thy neighbor's ox, his wife, his house, nothing of his. Ahab covered the king of Syria's house, his property, his land. Some of you want a married man, you want a married woman, you want a job that is not yours, your car that is not yours. You're coveting someone else's property. You want someone else's lifestyle, someone else's power and respect. You want something that is outside of God's will and purpose for you. And God has told you no, yet you're still pursuing it. We want the things that are not yet prepared for us. Not only do people pursue a no from God, they pursue a not yet from God. See, a no and a not yet are different. For a no says if you go that far, destruction is the end. But a not yet says it's not yet ready for you yet. And some of you are pursuing a no. God knows what is best for you. God knew that it was best for Ahab to not desire another land, for the king of Syria already told him, what is mine is yours. That's the treaty. But you want everything under your control. What has God told you no? What has God rejected of you? What has God said is not good for you? Why do people pursue the no of God? First thing is greed. Ahab wanted more. He wanted this city so bad that he ignored God's warning. He thought it was meant for him to have. Greed can get you. Satan, Lucifer, his original name was a king. He was a chief angel, had his own clique, his own kingdom on the earth. And yet he says, I want to be like God. I want the praise of God. I want the notoriety of God. So I will take my throne and place it above the heavens, above the stars of God. I will sit at the mount of congregation. And when they come to worship God, they will worship me. Ezekiel 28 says this, that he walked in the garden of God with gold socks, diamonds, rubies, beautiful stones, most beautiful of all of God's creatures. Yet the Bible says that the beauty of his pride was so lifted up in his heart that he wanted more, to the point that God stripped him down. Greed, Satan wanted more than he already had. David wanted Bathsheba. And when God confronts him, God says, if you wanted more, all you had to do was ask me, and I'm going to give you everything that you wanted. Some of you are pursuing something that you can't even handle. Your greed is getting